If your company is remote or hybrid, then you know how hard it can be for employees to build meaningful connections with each other. Well, this week's sponsor is here to solve that, and they are called Mystery. Mystery has changed the way that I even think about employee engagement. They use the power of data and virtual events to drive employee connections. I actually recently attended a Mystery demo, and let me tell you, I learned so much about the potential behind employee engagement and how Mystery's events drive connection and belonging. So I'm excited to share that there is a special promotion for listeners of my podcast. Thanks to Mystery, you can get your first 2 Mystery events for the price of 1. That is right, 2 events for the price of 1. So if you're looking for a way to improve employee engagement and drive connection in your organization, I highly recommend checking them out. Go to trymystery.com/HR-podcast. That's trymystery.com/HR-podcast to get this special offer. Plus, I've added the link in the show notes so you can just click there. Now, let's get back to the podcast. Welcome to the Bringing the Human Back to Human Resources podcast. I'm Tracy Chernoff, and I've spent my entire professional career in HR. Each week, we'll explore the delicate balance between people and business with the aim to reconnect the two and create meaningful outcomes. Listen in as I share my own experiences, challenge the status quo, and chat with guests from various industries about our mission to bring the human back to human resources. Welcome to 2023, everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you so much for returning to my podcast, for being subscribed, and, getting the news that the podcast is back. I took those last 2 weeks of December off, and it was really nice. I really enjoyed the downtime and the ability to kind of just, think through what I wanted 2023 to look like for the podcast and just in general, and put a little bit of pen to paper and get to planning. And I kind of like to reset before the new year starts. And so even though I'm recording this during that break time, I am definitely in the process of resetting for 2023. So while I say welcome to 2023 and Happy New Year, I'm kind of time traveling because it's not the new year yet for me. Nevertheless, I'm manifesting in my mind and out loud while recording this that I am going to take the rest of the week and these next couple of weeks to just really reset and refocus. And I hope that you did the same. I've talked about this before that, the beauty of starting a new year is that you get to kind of look at the past year and refresh, reset, and do all of those things. Before I jump into this week's episode, the very first episode of 2023, which is an exciting one, I have a couple things that I'm really looking forward to talking about here today. I wanted to just mention that if you are watching this podcast, whether you're on Spotify watching it as a video or on YouTube or wherever else, you are seeing me in almost potentially 4K. And I'm really excited about this because I was looking back at the videos from 2022 and I was like, I have to figure out how to use my Canon DSLR camera that I use for photography and point and shoot moments. And I had to figure out how to use it as a video camera because I know there's a way. And when there's a will, there's a way. I used YouTube and I taught myself and I figured it out. So we are officially in 4K. And it's wild because when I look at myself, I'm like, wow, I'm coming through so clearly, so much more clearly than a webcam. So, just another reason to watch the video. If you are visual, it's funny. There are podcasts that I listen to that I could never imagine watching. And then there are podcasts that I could never imagine listening to that I only watch. So, if this is one of those podcasts for you that you want to start watching, you can do that on Spotify. You can do it on YouTube, or you can just listen. Either way, same mic, same voice. We're still here. And I just appreciate you coming back, being here for the very first part of 2023. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, as I always remind you in the beginning and at the end. And you also might notice there have been some revisions and improvements to the overall production quality of the podcast. We are moving on up, people. I have some people helping me, so I'm not doing it all on my own anymore. There have been some major changes for 2023. I'm just so excited. And this would not have been at all possible without all of you who listen. So thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me and for just being here and being subscribed and commenting and liking and following me on Instagram and all the things that remind me why I do this thing that we call a podcast. So with that, I'm going to jump right into the two topics of today. The first, which we're going to come back to AI because there's still a lot of discussion about AI, artificial intelligence. If you didn't catch my last episode of 2022, I talk about this pretty in depth for the most part in terms of like one tool, ChatGPT, OpenAI, that I love. But I didn't really dive into artificial intelligence so much in other areas. I have had episodes in the past that deal with AI. So I'm going to kind of dig into a different side of artificial intelligence, but also we're going to talk a little bit about like some legislation that's coming out about artificial intelligence. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that last year, so in the last episode of 2022, I shared that kind of like a teaser that I was going to do something exciting in 2023 and it was just a matter of time until I shared. Well, I'm going to share what that thing is, but you have to make it to that point of the podcast to find out. I'm not going to tell you right now. So keep listening and you'll hear more. I have my notes here so I don't forget because I know sometimes I forget to say what I mean to say. Anyway, let's talk about AI. So I want to just start this episode by referencing, I'm looking at my phone here, by referencing something that has kind of been floating around from a legislative perspective. In New York City specifically, there have been some discussions around a law regulating the use of artificial intelligence tools, especially when it comes to hiring and job applications. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to come back to this, but I will link all of that information, of course, in the show notes. So the first thing that we have to talk about is this law. It basically is looking to mitigate bias. Of course, we can all get behind that, right? Bias has no place in the workplace or anywhere for that matter. But it also is saying that, hey, if you're going to use a tool that leverages artificial intelligence, you need to submit to auditing every year. Otherwise, you're going to face a fine. And by the way, you have to let candidates know that you're using artificial intelligence in hiring practices. So naturally, all of that would deter an employer from going through the artificial intelligence route. But let's break this down. I have had guests on the podcast who talk about both sides of the artificial intelligence discussion. And if I'll go back and I'll link the episodes where you can hear more from these guests, but there have been guests who have been very promoting of artificial intelligence in hiring and removing some of the human element to hiring. And I'll come back to that. And then there have been guests who are like, absolutely not. We need to keep the human in hiring. And my perspective is that it's not all or nothing. I don't believe that you can only do one or the other. I do believe, I say this all the time, two things can be true at once. More than two things can be true at once. And in this case, I think that AI can support in hiring practices and operations, and human contact in the hiring process is important. So two things, both of these things remain true. With that said, this law is really looking, again, the goal of this law is to mitigate bias and to remove bias from the hiring process. Now, someone on the other side of things could say, well, having a human screen resumes can be outwardly more biased than a computer, than artificial intelligence, which could be true, right? We know that people are equipped, unfortunately, with unconscious bias, and it's through learning and development and training and exposure to people of different backgrounds that we break down these biases. So someone could argue that artificial intelligence actually removes bias completely, but does it? In hiring and job application and resume screening, does it fully remove bias? It depends. To me, it depends on how the program is built and if there is some element of machine learning involved, which of course I am not a technical expert in data science and AI, but I think that AI and machine learning go hand in hand. Machine learning is the element that allows the computer to learn on itself. So I could see if legislators are saying, hey, in this tool, the computer has learned through machine learning that certain candidates are more favored than others. And in that, if candidates who are favored all are attributed to one race, gender, experience type, background, whatever we want to say, religion, sexuality, right? Whatever a computer could dissect from a resume, if it learns that they're from one resume that's been passed on, that is the favored, like, could there be bias there? I guess anything is possible, but I don't know that I totally align with this argument that AI is just as biased, or if not more biased, than a human being screening resumes. I'm just not sure that that's realistic. You know, I'm going to read something here. So this is from Bloomberg Law. Bloomberg Law does a really nice job of kind of talking about legislation that's up and coming, or things that, to kind of keep an eye out for. And I've referenced a lot of articles from them. Here it says, the use of artificial intelligence for recruitment, resume screening, automated video interviews, and other tasks has for years been on regulators and lawmakers' radar as workers began filing allegations of AI-related discrimination to the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, also known as the EEOC. Now, if you are based in the U.S., or if you've listened to my podcast before, you know that the EEOC requires reporting for companies of certain sizes in terms of headcount. And they make sure and validate that companies are within guidance and guidelines for equal employment opportunities. We see this in clauses all the time, like equal employment opportunity clauses. This is all kind of run by and executed by the EEOC. So the article continues by saying the EEOC recently signaled that it would delve into artificial intelligence tools and how they contribute to bias, including for hiring and employee surveillance. The Civil Rights Agency announced it will study how employers use AI and hear from stakeholders to provide guidance on algorithmic fairness. Now, for sure, I think there has to be a focus on fairness, consistency, and mitigating and reducing bias at every stage of the employment cycle. We talk about this all the time because it's important. The other side of things is that there certainly is bias in human-centric hiring. Without a doubt, I think we can all assign to this ideology that there are people who have experienced this type of bias. Now, and I've spoken to people about this as well. Now, what I want to share is that there are so many contributing factors when it comes to bias in hiring practices, mitigating bias. One of the things that employers need to think about is, are we asking everyone the same types of interview questions? Are we asking them, are we looking for the same kind of points and checkpoints to validate that they are moving on or that they are not the right fit, right? Are we giving everyone a fair opportunity to the open role for the open role? Are we inviting people to interview who are from different backgrounds? Now, there are tools that do automate this process, that if you set up controls and you say, hey, I need someone with this amount of experience, this amount of experience in this, and I want this type of background, that there is an automated perspective in many tools out there, not necessarily powered by AI, but through some sort of automation, because I guess most things are using AI, but not everything claims to be an AI tool. So I don't know where the line is drawn, so to speak. But in that, if a hiring manager and an employer make conscious efforts to ensure that there are people from different backgrounds in the candidate pool when they get to the final stages of interviews, then that's one way that humans in a human-centric and non-human-centric hiring process can ensure that they are checking bias at the door. And there are tons of companies that do this, that say, hey, we need to make sure that the final candidates are all representing different backgrounds and or are absolutely the best candidates, and that we've gone through all of these other candidates who do represent different backgrounds, and we have to, as we continue to shrink the candidate pool, that we're ensuring that there are people in the candidate pool from start to finish who are from different backgrounds. It's a very popular and common practice for businesses to ensure that there is diversity in the candidate pool. But how does AI ensure that? Or is the flip side of this that AI doesn't have to worry about that because it's looking at parameters and information that it needs to match from the resume to the job description, and it's not looking at someone's gender or race or their name or their picture or anything like that to look at or make a hiring decision or look at their application to move them into an interview stage? I don't know. The jury is out for me. I'm not 100% sure what the right answer is here. I do tend to believe that regulation is a really good thing in pretty much all areas of our lives and our experiences in the workplace as well. Regulation is what allows employers to understand their obligations. It gives, a more finite approach to how to handle people and how to handle the nuances of managing people. And it also protects employees. So, for example, when it comes to the EEOC, for example, the EEOC actually was established in 1964, I think. And they, without the EEOC, there was a lot more potential for civil liberty violations and violations of people's rights. And so with regulation, we've been able to establish rights and laws and legislation that protects people and employees. There's, of course, always going to be an argument out there about when there's too much law, when there's too much regulation. But at present, AI is a fairly new technology, new not being like 6 months old, but also not being 50 years old necessarily, from what I understand. Again, I am no expert in this science, but I think it's probably been 10 to 20 years since the advent of AI, but I could be wrong. But given that this is an advancement, a scientific advancement, of course there's no regulation right now. Of course, this is a kind of like a blank slate for legislators and for businesses to figure out what lines are they restricted by, and what lines can they cross, what lines in the sand are we drawing, right? So all of this discussion is really pretty vague because we don't have a lot of information and we don't have a lot of regulation. Now, I do believe that AI in general reduces bias. I do believe that AI in general across like facets of the workplace can improve employee experience. For example, I actually just became an HR advisor for this company called CultureBot. And essentially it's an HR technology that automates processes for HR people through the focus and the lens of driving employee engagement. That's an amazing thing, right? We all, as HR people, can think about times, potentially now or at present, where we have been very lean, and HR teams tend to run very, very lean. And we struggle to take advantage of the opportunities that we have to drive employee engagement, to do different things for our companies because our bandwidth is limited, our time is limited. So, and on the other side of things too, HR tends to be fairly manual. There are a lot of manual practices within our focus and departments. And especially if you're not a especially if you're not a super big company, but there are really big companies out there that are really manual and more manual than smaller companies. So I kind of take that back. It doesn't depend actually on the size of your organization. It depends on the ethos of your organization, whether or not you're automated or not. And maybe it's not even the ethos of the organization, but rather your HR leader. So anyway, I share this because at CultureBot, where again, I'm an HR advisor, we have been looking at how automation has helped HR leaders who use CultureBot and integrate CultureBot into their environments, how they now have time for other things. So this is, again, where AI, automation help to improve employee experience and promote inclusivity. Have you ever, I know I have done this, have you ever accidentally forgotten a birthday or an anniversary or typed in the wrong name for someone and you said someone else's name instead of theirs when you were wishing them an anniversary or congratulating them on something? Automation removes those cringeworthy moments and the automation enables the inclusivity of this process. Manual processes will always have human error. And with human error, there's obviously the error in the execution, but there could also be error based on a lack of inclusivity and bias. So, I tend to be on the side of automation in most cases. My own company leverages intelligent automation, or thanks to intelligent automation, really, our solutions are leveraged. That's really what I should say. Because it is the AI, it is the machine learning that enables the powerful scheduling for employees who are clients of ours. And you guys know, if you've listened, that I was a customer before I was an employee at my current company. And I used our technology as a customer. And it removed scheduling bias. Scheduling is one of the most biased processes in a workplace. And honestly, potentially more biased than hiring, because once someone is on the team, if you have a favorite, people are scheduling their favorite, most productive, I'm using air quotes, most productive employees and putting them on the best shifts, the most important shifts at the most times or the best times. And if you're in a commission environment, that, what are you using to evaluate someone being a better performer, right? Whereas when you use like a technology like my company's, you're using data, like actual factual data, to determine who is a top performer. So then when you are scheduling top performers at peak times, it's not biased, it's based on fact. So, and I should definitely showcase that you can schedule the best person at the best time. That is not a biased thing to do. It's evaluating people that's biased. It's assessing people's performance that can be biased. And we see this all the time, right? We get complaints all the time that, oh, my manager doesn't care about what I do. My manager doesn't believe in me. My manager doesn't like me. I'm going to get a bad review. They're going to fire me, right? All of that is discussion about how someone feels like their performance is evaluated at a biased perspective or from a biased perspective. And it's not to say that everyone is going to be against us. Everyone's going to be biased when they assess our performance. That's not necessarily true. But automating some of these processes that can be more biased, like scheduling employees, like screening resumes, can be beneficial to automate, to leverage a computer to go through. Again, a computer is going to do what we ask of it. So if we're not putting in place parameters to ensure that bias is also mitigated from an automation standpoint, then we are going to maintain a biased standpoint. So it is important that parameters are in place, that there is regulation, and that there is a focus on mitigating bias, regardless of whether you're using automation or not. So with this, I think we'll continue to see more, especially from New York City and California, the early adopters for regulation. And I'm sure that we'll continue to talk about this. So don't get sick of the discussion on AI just yet. There's going to be more for sure. I can smell it in the 2023 air, that this is going to be the year of automation, the year of progress, and the year of discussing automation. And, I think it's great. Like we saw in 2020, 2021, it was the year of HR. It was like, I think about, like the Zodiac and stuff. Like that was the year of HR. And now we're living in the year of automation in my humble opinion. And in the year of HR, we saw a huge investment into our industry, into this career, which has been incredible to watch. And in 2022, there was a little bit of maybe we can like stay focused on people, but like pull back a little bit and focus on other things. That is my opinion. Again, I think that there are some companies that forgot that being focused on humans is good for business and that it's not just a 2020 thing, that this is a forever thing. Like, see my episode on quiet quitting if you want to hear more about this opinion. But the year of 2023 is going to be about automation. So for those of us in HR, we have to be at the forefront of progress. We have to be at the forefront of automation. And far too often, I connect with HR folks, leaders, professionals who are really, one, afraid of automation, and two, inept at it. And I say that with the most kindness in my heart, but we have to, as leaders of businesses, as people who are constantly focused on how do we protect the interests of both the employee and the business, we have to know what's going on and we have to move with the times. We've got to get with the times and we have to move with them and be 5 steps ahead. And that is honestly the only way that I know how to function. I can't imagine working in a fully manual process at any point, but especially at this stage of my career. So for HR teams, if we are still operating in a manual process, we are light years behind the times and we have to get with the program. Now, of course, there are costs associated with instituting AI-focused tools and solutions that leverage, automation. But you have to do a cost benefit analysis. Like how much time are you spending, or should I say wasting, doing manual things like shouting out birthdays and anniversaries, for example? It's a huge time suck. It's important though. It has to still happen. But does it have to happen thanks to your fingertips every single day or every single week? Not necessarily. Like your brain power could be used for other things. And we can outsource some of these super manual, tedious things that do take up a ton of our time and don't necessarily give us a lot back or a huge return on our investment, with the exception, of course, for the intrinsic employee engagement and experience benefits that come with making people feel connected and as though they belong, which they should. So that's my take on AI, my soliloquy, if you will. And again, I think there's going to be a lot more discussion on this. Let me know what you think about AI in general. If technology scares you, let me know. I'm going to put a poll. So if you're on Spotify, I'll put a poll asking, what you thought of the episode and potentially some other questions. So make sure you answer in that poll. I will take a look. But yeah, write me, email me. You can email me at contact@hrtracy.com if you have thoughts on this or if you have your own personal experience. And yeah, let's keep the conversation going about AI. Now, we have come to the part of the episode where I share the thing that I teased, the thing that I was so excited about that I wasn't sure would 100% happen, but is going to happen. So if you're connected with me on LinkedIn, I had posted a few weeks back a post that basically sought to connect people who are in the job market, looking for jobs, actively applying, looking to make a change with people who can place them in these jobs or can connect with them and interview them or what have you. And it got me thinking about the value of kind of showcasing these individuals, because there have been so many layoffs. And if you want to hear my opinion on HR's involvement in that, go listen to the last episode of 2022. I think it was the last episode of 2022. Anyway, go back and listen. Or if you've already heard my opinion, then you know why I'm being a little cheeky, as they say, with this. But those layoffs, there were tens of thousands of them. So there obviously are still a lot of jobs open. But one of the challenges, I think, in hiring is that there are all of these jobs and all of these applicants, and so few of them get matched and so few of them get seen. And it's kind of like one of those things where it's this matrix. Like, how do we have so many candidates? How do we have so many open jobs? And yet so few are actually kind of getting pulled off of the open to work market and placed in these jobs. Of course, they're with someone who goes from one job to another, that opens up that last job, but it's just like this ever evolving, revolving door. And there are good reasons for this. There are economic understandings behind the job market. This is what makes the job market tight, that there is good talent out there, but there's also good talent staying in their jobs. And good talent staying in their jobs means that those potentially more senior positions are fewer and far between unless there's movement. And then even sometimes there are fewer entry-level positions because people are not moving. So that's really, truly what makes for a tighter job market. And I'm really glazing over that. But anyway, through this initial LinkedIn post, it got me thinking about what I could do to showcase these folks who are looking for jobs, whether it's in HR or not. And so I've decided that I'm going to do little bonus episodes almost that showcase people who are open for work, looking for a new job, looking for a change. And I will basically treat this time, it would probably be 15-minute conversations with these individuals, but it'll basically be like an interview. And it will allow the candidate or the person who's looking for a job to showcase their skill sets, share what they're looking for, and for them to potentially share the conversation with a prospective employer. So it's almost like, I don't know, I'm trying to be kind of a disruptor in this, I guess, because it's like, well, if a hiring manager could hear from a candidate before they even look at their resume, is that something that bridges a connection quickly? Is that the thing that's going to allow the candidate to get an interview for their application to be seen? I don't know. So at any rate, it's going to be fun, I think, to have these conversations and to just chat. And I don't know, I haven't met with anyone yet. This is just my idea. And I'm going to put pen to paper and try and get folks who would be open to this to chat with me. And there won't be any requirement to be on video, but it will be a podcast recording where I ask this, any person willing to do this, have these conversations with me. I'm going to ask them questions that they might hear on a job interview. It'll almost be like a video or audio portfolio for them. And so I say that because I'm adding a form in the show notes that will allow you to submit information either about yourself or a friend who you might want to see showcased in one of these bonus episodes so that we can get them on the show or get you on the show. And then on the other side of things, if you or someone in your job or in your workplace is hiring for a role that matches someone that you heard from on the podcast, then you'll have their contact information. You'll be able to get in touch with them. And hopefully it will kind of allow for really organic connections and conversations to happen. So I don't have any expectations for this. I just thought it would be a fun way to actually do something at the next level to connect people with hopefully their future jobs. We'll see. I'm going to try it. I'm going to at least try it for a few months and we'll see where it goes. But I want to try and give back because there have been a lot of people in my life who have connected me with others for jobs that I've had. And without those connections, sometimes you just, I've gotten jobs without connections and I've gotten them with connections, and it's much more preferred to have a connection because then you can kind of get the information about what you can expect to experience before you kind of have to go through it. So anyway, that is my big, bright idea. I hope you like the idea. Be sure to go into the show notes. I have a ton of resources there for you. I have information on this AI law in New York City, on AI in general, information about CultureBot, information about this, getting people on the podcast to talk about their work search and job search and to highlight them. So tons and tons and tons of information. Thank you so much for being here for the first episode of 2023. I so appreciate your time. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and click the show notes so you can get connected with all of those links, learn more, and share the name of either yourself or a friend who you think should be showcased in whatever I'm going to call this, but these bonus episodes where we talk about talk to people who are looking for their next job. Thank you so much. See you next week. Hey, just before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you are the first to hear when an episode drops each week. And maybe leave a 5-star review and a comment about how much you loved this episode. Plus, if you have someone in mind who would really enjoy this episode, make sure you share it with them. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week.